Have you ever noticed that the moment you stop texting, stop checking in, stop trying, he suddenly starts caring again? It's not magic. It's not a trick. It's psychology. The truth is, when someone gets used to your presence, they stop valuing it. But when you pull back, when you go quiet, when you put the focus back on you, something shifts. He starts to feel what life is like without you at the center of it. This isn't about playing games. It's about protecting your energy and showing someone that access to you is earned, not given for free. So let's talk about why ignoring him, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, is often what makes him finally wake up. Attention is one of the most powerful currencies we have in relationships. Yet your absence, yet it's the one we're most likely to give away without realizing its true value. When you like someone, especially someone who's pulling away, it's easy to think that showing more attention, being more present, or staying constantly available will somehow fix the growing distance. But in reality, the more attention you give to someone who's taking you for granted, the more they unconsciously learn to undervalue it. Attention becomes expected, not appreciated. When you treat your attention as something scarce, as something earned rather than freely given, you create a natural pull. Why? Because human psychology works in patterns of supply and demand. If someone knows they can have your time, energy, and emotional investment at any moment, regardless of how they show up, they don't feel the need to earn it. It's not intentional disrespect. It's just how our minds adapt. The things we get without effort are the things we value the least. It's a survival instinct. We conserve our energy for what requires it. So, if your attention is always available, it stops feeling special. Now flip that scenario. Imagine instead of chasing, explaining, or pouring energy into someone who isn't giving the same in return, you pause. You shift your focus away from them and back onto yourself. You stop texting first. You stop being the one who keeps the conversation alive. You stop checking if they saw your story or liked your post. And when you do that, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity, something changes. That person feels the absence of your attention. They notice the silence where your presence used to be. And most importantly, they start to question what they had been taking for granted. When you remove your energy, you force them to reevaluate. Suddenly, you're not predictable. You're not emotionally accessible 247. They feel that shift. Maybe not right away. Maybe it takes a few days or even weeks. But eventually, the very attention they didn't value becomes the thing they crave. Because now, it's not guaranteed. It's not free. It's not endless. And in that scarcity, they begin to remember what made your presence so powerful in the first place. This doesn't mean you use silence as a weapon. It's not about manipulating someone into chasing you. It's about realizing that if someone isn't meeting you halfway, your attention is being wasted. And the way you reclaim your self-respect is by stepping back, not to punish them, but to honor yourself. To say, I'm not here to convince you to care. I'm here to protect my energy. This mindset can feel unnatural at first, especially if you're used to being the giver, the peacemaker, the one who keeps the connection alive. But often, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Let silence be your message. Let absence create curiosity. Let your decision to stop trying be the moment they start to notice what they've lost. Because people don't respond to words the way they respond to energy. And when your energy shifts, when your attention becomes something they have to earn again, they either step up or step out. Either way you win. Because your attention, when treated as valuable, becomes a mirror. It reflects what someone truly feels, what they're willing to do, and how much they're ready to invest. So the question isn't whether ignoring him will make him come running. The real question is, does he deserve to be in the presence of someone who knows the worth of their attention? And only your silence will tell you the answer. There's a kind of power that comes with doing nothing, not react chasing, not explaining, just removing yourself. At first, it feels counterintuitive. We're wired to believe that if we care about someone, we need to express it, prove it, and stay close to maintain the connection. But often, the strongest message isn't delivered through words or effort. It's delivered through absence. When someone begins to feel your silence instead of hearing your voice, that's when the reality of losing you starts to sink in. People get used to patterns. They expect certain behaviors, especially when those behaviors come from someone who consistently shows up. If you're always initiating, always checking in, always available, they begin to associate your presence with predictability. But the moment you go quiet, the rhythm breaks, the energy shifts, and suddenly there's a space where you used to be, a silence where they once heard from you. That silence makes them notice, not just the lack of contact, but the lack of certainty. They no longer know where they stand, and for someone who's been taking your presence for granted, that shift can be surprisingly loud. Absence challenges the human ego in a way that words never could. When someone doesn't hear from you, they're forced to sit with questions. Did she give up? Did I push too far? Is she moving on? The mind fills in the gaps that silence leaves behind. And that uncertainty creates tension, a kind of internal discomfort that can only be resolved by reaching out. That's why so often, the moment you step back, you get that unexpected text, that sudden interest, that ping of curiosity, because your silence created a void they didn't expect to feel. This isn't about playing mind games. It's about emotional clarity. You're not being silent to manipulate someone into noticing you. You're being silent because talking, giving, and explaining no longer feels earned. It's not a punishment, it's a pause. A decision to stop pouring energy into something that isn't giving back. When you pull away, you give yourself space to breathe, to reflect, to reset your emotional boundaries. And in that space, something powerful happens. They start to feel what it's like without you. And here's the truth. If your absence doesn't affect them, your presence never mattered to them as much as you thought. That can be painful to realize, but it's also freeing, because the goal isn't to make someone come running. The goal is to get honest feedback on what your relationship really means to them. If someone truly values you, they won't let silence stretch into distance. They'll feel the disconnect and try to repair it. They'll reach out because your absence speaks to them. If they don't, you've saved yourself from further disappointment. What silence does better than any conversation is reveal intention. It clears the noise. It removes the need for performance. In silence, people show you who they are. Will they fight for you or fade away? Will they step up or stay gone? These answers can't be forced. They have to come naturally, and they usually show up the moment you stop speaking and start listening to what their actions, or lack thereof, are really telling you. So the next time you feel the urge to explain your worth, to remind someone of what you bring to the table, consider stepping back instead. Let your absence do the talking. Let the silence create the contrast, and watch what they do with the space you leave behind. Because those who truly care will hear the silence loud and clear, and they'll come closer, not because you asked, but because they realized what they were missing. There's something magnetic about high-value behavior. It's not about looks, charm, or how clever your texts are. It's about how you carry yourself, the standards you live by, and the boundaries you set. When you choose to stop responding to someone who's not showing up for you, when you stop chasing, when you remove your emotional availability from someone who isn't matching your energy, that's high-value behavior. And whether they realize it consciously or not, people are deeply drawn to that kind of energy. Most people aren't attracted to someone who's always available, always accommodating, and always ready to please. That kind of constant availability feels nice at first, but over time it loses its pull. Why? Because humans naturally place more value on what they perceive as scarce, selective, or earned. If your attention is constant, it becomes background noise. But when you begin to pull back, not in anger or out of manipulation, but because your self-worth demands it, you shift from being predictable to being powerful. High-value behavior is rooted in self-respect. You're not ignoring someone because you want to punish them. You're doing it because you refuse to continue investing in someone who isn't meeting you halfway. You're communicating, without saying a word, that your love, time, and presence are not unlimited resources to be used whenever it suits someone else. And when you show that kind of restraint, people take notice. You go from someone who can be taken for granted to someone they need to step up for. That shift triggers something in people, especially in those who are used to being the ones in control. When you no longer act like you need them, when you stop placing them at the center of your emotional world, they begin to wonder why. They begin to question whether they misjudged your interest, your availability, or your place in their life. That uncertainty fuels curiosity, and curiosity often leads to action. What's important to understand is that you don't have to prove your worth to anyone. The very act of walking away from what no longer serves you proves it more clearly than any explanation ever could. When you stop trying to fix things that someone else keeps breaking, you send a powerful message. I know what I bring and the weight of your absence, and I won't stay where it isn't appreciated. That message isn't loud, but it's unforgettable. People respond to high-value behavior because it forces them to rise to your level or get left behind. When you pull away, someone who genuinely values you will feel the shift and try to close the gap. Someone who was only there for the convenience will let the silence grow. And that's your answer. Either way, you don't lose. So when you stop calling, stop texting, stop showing up for someone who's giving you inconsistency, you're not being cold. You're being clear. You're no longer trying to convince anyone of your value. You're letting your absence speak for itself. And that's what high-value people do. They don't beg for attention. They create space for the right people to step forward. Because when you hold yourself to a higher standard, you invite others to do the same. And if they can't, you've already shown yourself that you're capable of walking away with grace, dignity, and strength. That's what makes people come back. Not the silence alone, but the confidence behind it. The quiet strength that says, I'm not here to chase. I'm here to be chosen. Every relationship teaches the other person how to treat us, whether we realize it or not. Through our actions, our responses, and what we choose to tolerate, we silently set the standard for how we expect to be treated. When you allow someone to disrespect your time, neglect your needs, or show up inconsistently without consequence, you're telling them, without words, that their behavior is acceptable. You're teaching them that you'll stay, no matter how little they give. That's not weakness, it's human nature to want connection, to hope things will improve. But it becomes a pattern, and that pattern becomes your standard. When someone knows they can treat you poorly and still have access to your attention, your energy, and your presence, they lose the incentive to change. Why would they? If there's no discomfort, there's no urgency. If they never feel the risk of losing you, they won't feel the need to step up. It's not always malicious. Often, it's unconscious. People operate within the limits we allow them to. And the longer we let things slide, the more permanent those dynamics become. Pulling away isn't about revenge. It's about recalibration. It's about recognizing that your presence in someone's life is a privilege, not a given. The moment you remove yourself from a dynamic that doesn't serve you, everything changes. You stop reinforcing the idea that bad behavior is tolerable. You stop teaching them that you'll stay, no matter what. Instead, you begin to teach them something far more valuable. That access to you must be earned through consistency, respect, and real effort. This doesn't mean you cut people off at the first sign of conflict. Relationships require grace and patience. But there's a difference between forgiving someone who slips up and repeatedly tolerating behavior that drains you. There's a difference between compassion and self-abandonment. When you find yourself constantly explaining your worth or trying to get someone to meet you halfway, you have to ask yourself, what am I teaching them by staying? Sometimes the most powerful shift happens when you simply stop showing up for the role they've come to expect. You stop being the emotional caretaker. You stop being the one who always smooths things over. You stop accepting crumbs. That absence, your withdrawal of energy, forces them to feel the cost of their actions. It creates contrast. They begin to realize what your presence was really worth, because now it's gone. Now it's uncertain. Now they have to work to regain what they once took for granted. And if they truly value you, they will rise to meet your standard. Not because you begged them to, but because they want to. Because your change in behavior made them confront the reality that they could lose you. That's when real change begins. When someone chooses to grow, not because you pleaded, but because your absence created the space for reflection. If they don't change, you haven't lost anything. You've simply revealed what was true all along. And instead of teaching them that you'll always accept less, you've taught yourself that you deserve more. That lesson is everything. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about being honest with yourself about what you want and refusing to accept anything less than mutual effort and respect. In the end, how you allow someone to treat you becomes the blueprint for how they will. And if you want that blueprint to reflect love, respect, and reciprocity, it has to start with what you no longer tolerate. That's when things shift, not just in them, but in you. There comes a point in any relationship where you have to ask yourself a simple but powerful question. Am I acting like the prize? Or am I acting like I need to be chosen? The difference is subtle, but it changes everything. When you begin to place someone else's attention, validation, or affection above your own self-worth, you lose your balance. You shift from being confident and grounded to being reactive and dependent. And the moment that shift happens, the dynamic of the relationship tilts. You start chasing instead of attracting. You start proving instead of receiving. And often, you don't even realize it's happening. Reclaiming that balance means stepping back and putting the focus back on yourself. It means recognizing that you are not someone waiting to be picked. You are someone of value who sets the tone for how others engage with you. You become the prize again, not pretending to be indifferent or playing games, but by actually understanding your worth and refusing to accept anything less than someone who sees and respects it. This mindset changes the energy you bring into every interaction. Instead of trying to hold on to someone who's slipping away, you let them go. Not because you don't care, but because you care about yourself more. When you pull back from someone who's not treating you right, it's not about punishment, it's about clarity. You're no longer rewarding inconsistency with access. You're no longer offering full commitment to someone who's only half showing up. That self-respect becomes a kind of gravitational pull. It signals to the other person, consciously or not, that if they want to be in your life, they need to meet you where you are. Not because you're demanding it, but because you've stopped overcompensating for their lack of effort. People often talk about confidence like it's something you fake until you make it. But real confidence isn't loud. It's quiet. It's felt in your ability to walk away when something doesn't align with your values. It's in your silence when someone expects a reaction, and you simply give them space instead. It's in the way you stay calm, centered, and focused on your own life, even when someone tries to create emotional chaos. That calm presence is what makes you the prize. Not arrogance, not aloofness, but unwavering self-trust. You become magnetic when you stop trying to prove your value and instead embody it. When you stop trying to be everything to someone else and start being everything to yourself. You take care of your energy. You set boundaries. You know what you bring to the table, and you don't shrink just because someone isn't ready for it. That's when the game changes. That's when people start to notice the difference between what they had and what they lost. Because you're no longer the person who's always available, always waiting, always saying yes, no matter how you're treated. You've raised the bar, and now it's up to them to rise to it. If they don't, that doesn't make you any less of the prize. It just means they weren't capable of appreciating it. And in knowing that, you win. You don't lose by walking away from someone who couldn't meet your standards. You lose by staying and lowering them just to keep someone around. So when you feel yourself slipping into that space of needing to be chosen, remember, you're not here to beg for a place in someone's life. You're here to live your life so fully that the right people want to be part of it. Because the moment you act like the prize again, the people who are meant for you will start treating you like one. Choosing to ignore someone isn't always about creating distance. It's often about reclaiming power. But the key difference lies in your intent. If you're pulling away just to provoke a reaction, to make someone chase you, or to play a role in a strategy, it becomes a game. And while it may get you short-term results, it rarely builds something meaningful. However, if you choose to step back because you realize you've been giving too much to someone who isn't giving enough, that shift is no longer about them. It's about you. That's not manipulation. That's self-respect. There's a fine line between silence used as a tactic and silence used as a boundary. One is rooted in fear, the fear of losing them, the fear of not being seen, of not being enough. The other is rooted in strength, the strength to stop pouring energy into something one-sided, the strength to stop making excuses for behavior that doesn't feel good, and the strength to choose yourself even when it's hard. Ignoring someone because they've stopped showing up for you isn't petty. It's protective. It's how you signal, without saying a word, that you're no longer available for emotional laziness. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to you. When someone stops showing effort, respect, or emotional consistency, you have every right to pause and reassess what you're giving. If you've been the one trying, reaching out, and holding the relationship together, and all you've received in return is mixed signals or silence, then continuing to engage only reinforces that dynamic. By stepping away of your absence, you're not punishing them. You're removing yourself from a pattern that's hurting you. You're choosing not to keep investing in someone who isn't investing back. That is power. The most misunderstood part of ignoring someone is that it often gets labeled as cold, heartless, or cruel. But in truth, silence is sometimes the most compassionate response you can give yourself. You're choosing peace over confusion. You're choosing clarity over chaos. You're no longer explaining your worth or begging someone to treat you the way you deserve. You're simply walking away from a conversation that became one-sided a long time ago. That silence says, I've said enough. I've done enough. Now it's on you. When you do this not with bitterness, but with calm resolve, it becomes one of the most attractive forms of strength. There's something incredibly powerful about someone who knows they could say more, do more, or fight harder. But instead, they choose to do less. They choose to protect their energy. They choose to go quiet. That kind of emotional discipline doesn't go unnoticed. In fact, it often says more than any message ever could. And for the person on the receiving end, it creates a mirror. They're left to sit with their choices, their behavior, and the absence they created. Sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't. But the outcome is no longer the goal. The real win is that you acted in alignment with your value. You chose silence not to manipulate, but to heal. You stepped back not to teach them a lesson, but to finally learn yours. That staying connected to someone who makes you question your worth is never worth the emotional cost. And once you truly understand that, everything changes. You no longer chase clarity from someone else. You find it within yourself. You no longer need validation from someone who couldn't see you. You validate your own experience by walking away. That's not a game. That's growth. To wrap it all up, the power of stepping back, of choosing silence and self-respect over chasing and explaining, is about reclaiming your emotional freedom. It's about knowing your worth so deeply that you no longer settle for less than you deserve. Ignoring someone, not out of spite, but out of strength, is not about manipulation. It's about setting boundaries and honoring yourself. When you act like the prize, when you teach others how to treat you by what you tolerate, you invite the right people into your life. Those who truly value, respect, and cherish you. So trust in your worth, stand firm in your standards, and remember, Sometimes the best way to make someone realize what they lost is simply to live your life fully and unapologetically without them.